Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review The Witcher Blood Origins. And this 4-episode miniseries is a prequel over on Netflix because they can't help themselves but want to keep expanding the worlds of the series that they have. And yes, there's no Henry Cavill as Geralt in this particular series. This takes place thousands of years before the events, and maybe it's the dawn of The Witcher. At least that would be interesting. But for the most part, this 4-episode series is kind of a hodgepodge of some of the most basic elements that you expect from a fantasy series and a fantasy story, and none of them particularly interesting on their own. And you have this series that, you have Sophia Brown, who is kind of like one of the two main leads of this story, and I think she's extremely charismatic. I found her performance interesting. She goes with Lawrence O'Farrion, who plays this other character who, of course, they're at odds at first. They can't stand each other, but then somehow they fall in love with each other in the most cliche kind of rom-com-y kind of way. But of course, it is a tragic story as we go along in these 4 episodes. And, they hold their own when it comes to the action sequences. Obviously, they both kind of pale in comparison to probably the star of the action, Michelle Yeoh, who pops up into this series as well. Takes almost the whole entire first episode to chomping at the bit there. The first episode's like a full hour something. And then each of the other episodes dwindle down to like 40-something minutes. And I think those were more manageable because there's just so many moving pieces in this story. Even when you get to like the climactic episode, like the 4th episode really is one big third act. And you're starting to think like, there's this whole entire thread where I'm like, what the hell does this even mean? Why do we even care? And that's a shame when you're getting to that point where you're realizing that some of these storylines just don't resonate, don't hit on a certain level, and you kind of just want to stick with the ones that you do kind of feel. And in general, like, people are putting, like, I've seen some horrible reviews of this show. It's fine. It's not the worst thing that I've ever seen, but it's not particularly well written. It is convoluted. There's way too many characters and threads going on. I feel like this antagonistic queen character is one of the least interesting characters in the show, and she's like the main antagonist. But there's a couple of characters that pop in that are fun and interesting and shake things up along the way. But in general, this series definitely doesn't feel like it has the same kind of production level as The Witcher. You do have some very, very fleeting moments of some fun Witcher monster action, like very few, as in you have to really wait for this. And it feels very loose, like Prometheus loose in terms of how it connects to The Witcher. And on some level, it's just kind of like, it felt like an excuse for them to continue to tell stories from this world, even if it doesn't necessarily feel like that world. And then it spends the last couple of minutes desperately trying to be like, but this is how this world's set up. And it's like, okay, thank you. Didn't really feel it the first 3 episodes and 7/8 of it, and now you're trying to like hook you to be like, this is why this is related. Like, it doesn't really feel anything even relatable to the original series besides being, like, vaguely fantasy until, like, the last episode. So, in the end, this is probably not a series I'd highly recommend to anybody, except, like, if you really love fantasy and you just want to get lost in a fantasy world for 4 episodes, you got that. It's right there on Netflix. But those are my thoughts on The Witcher Blood Origins. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some TV. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.